Hi, everybody. My name is Zara, and I am the CEO of In the Loop and the host of the Scaling Secondhand podcast, where we're talking all things mission, madness, and methods behind at scale secondhand businesses. Today, I'm really excited to be joined by Ryan Frankel from Thrift Vintage Fashion and Shed. I visited Ryan, I believe, a year or so ago at TVF's warehouse in Hialeah, Florida. And since then, we've had the pleasure of working together and seeing the evolution of your businesses. So thank you, Ryan, for being here and welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me, Zara. I look forward to the discussion.
Awesome. So, first question I ask everybody is what is the craziest, weirdest, most amazing thing you've ever found in your warehouse?
Craziest thing. The most valuable would probably be this really cool old 90s Snoop Dogg t-shirt. It's that classic one where it's just his like big head with the afro on it from the mid 90s. That one sold for a lot of money. That was probably the most expensive t-shirt I've ever found. It was a couple years ago.
Did you know,
Trying
like,
to,
immediately it was super valuable, or did you have
yeah,
to, like, do some research?
for that one, I had an idea it was really valuable, not as valuable as it was. Um, But yeah, we did find, we find all types of weird stuff all the time too, which is funky. Here's a pretty cool story. I was watching the movie Basketball from the late 90s with the guys who created South Park. And as I was watching the movie, this happened like 4 years ago. I ended up looking up the t-shirts on eBay. I was like, I'd freaking love this movie. Let me just see what it would be like, cost wise to get a t-shirt. And yeah, they were going for like 250, and I was like, oh, I'm not going to spend that on a t-shirt. I get my stuff for next to nothing. So and then the next day I go into my warehouse, and one of our graders is grading through a t-shirt bale, and I just happen to walk over, which I rarely grade through the bales at this stage, and I just happen to walk over, and right on top of the bale as he was pulling a t-shirt off, it was a basketball t-shirt, one of the ones that I saw on eBay, which was just
Wow.
a crazy serendipitous moment. I was like running around the warehouse screaming, showing everybody my like recent eBay search history from last night. I was like, I just looked this shirt up. Like that was just one of the like most wild serendipitous moments I've had in vintage. So
Was it your size?
it
Nice.
was an XL. It was just meant for me. It was
That's
a perfect
amazing.
situation. Yeah, it was cool.
Amazing. I love that. So, your grandfather started selling used army uniforms from his basement after the Second World War, and your dad sold Levi's and other men's clothing. So, now we're on our third generation of the business. So, what is one thing that you know because of this lineage that others don't?
Sure, yeah. The secondhand clothing industry has evolved a lot, even in like the last decade. America has really taken it up the way that Europe has taken it up for the last couple decades. But yeah, when my grandfather started, there was only like a couple categories. It was like army and like menswear, like formal menswear, because men's just wore suits. And then when my father was doing it primarily in the 90s, he was doing mostly Levi's and like a couple other categories like women's dresses and stuff too. And then when I joined up with him in 2010, I really took it as an opportunity to modernize it and look at the men's secondhand industry as a whole and think how could we categorize this a little better and offer more products out to the public. So yeah, from what I learned was just the ability to have access to it really gave me a step up. Just seeing so much of it growing up, and having so much of it to play with and market it differently and build websites to try to categorize and market it differently. That was really an advantage for me, I think. And yeah, so from 2010 to 2020, I had a lot of experimentation working side by side with my father. And then in 2020, that's when I started Thrift Vintage Fashion, which was the culmination of pretty much everything I learned, and decided to just go full steam ahead with that, with categorizing men's vintage and secondhand categories, offering it to the public.
So, do you think that the taxonomy that you guys have developed is pretty unique in its simplicity or its comprehensiveness? Like, where does it differentiate from others in the market?
Sure. So I tried to boil it down to like the broadest categories like t-shirts, sweatshirts, jackets, denim. There's about 10 different categories, like 8 to 10 different categories that men's clothing just happens to fall into, and then we do focus on the most trendy categories within those. So like the subcategories of t-shirts are like Harley, NASCAR, music, branded cultural stuff like TV, movie, and cartoon, pro sports and college. Like the way that I look at it is like there was only so much clothing created over the past 30 plus years. Um, and it all can be boiled down and simplified into these specific categories and subcategories. So, people ask sometimes like, do your categories change? Do you ever add stuff? Not really. Like, stuff comes in and out of trend, but we really break it down to where it just kind of is what it is. Whatever was produced, that's what we are able to offer. And we do, again, focus on just the trendy stuff. We figured out the trends years ago that come and go. For example, like Hawaiian shirts may be hot one year, one summer, but then don't sell well for like 3 or 4 years. Same thing with certain denim categories. Levi's are always hot. Um, but yeah, like some trends come and go, but we generally offer them all out to the public, and people pick at them based on their market and how they want to sell.
Would you say that the time horizon for men's secondhand trends is longer than that of women? So women's department goes through trends faster and makes it a little bit more difficult to keep up with that sort?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many differences between the two. I really stay out of women's. I really just focus on men's. It's what I know best. Historically, just being into fashion myself growing up, and I just resonate so much better with it that I just stayed out of women's. So I can't fully answer that question, but I will say that women's is very much more nuanced. The limited amount of time that I have dealt in women's wholesale, there tends to be a lot more pickiness, which isn't a bad thing from them, but from a wholesale perspective, we would have to allow them to hand pick and open up our doors, which I never have. It's
Mm.
always been a policy that we are closed to the public and we do all the grading and sorting and uh, formulaic mixes ourselves without people hand picking and pulling out the cream and picking what they want. It's really hard to scale this business that way. So, yeah, I will say men's is very different than women's, but unfortunately, I can't really comment on the women's specifically too much.
Yeah, that part about being close to the public is interesting. I didn't know that.
So we've always found it more scalable long term to be in control of our formulas for our mixes rather than let the public handpick and then we just have whatever's left over to sell through. A lot of rag houses do it differently. I'm not necessarily a rag house. I don't deal in raw, unsorted product. Everything I buy is pre-sorted, so I'm paying a premium for my product, and I kind of buy it sorted the way that I sell, so it's easier. But yes, most rag houses do allow hand pickers, and it does, in my opinion, harness their ability to scale in vintage departments. Japanese is kind of different though, because they're super picky and they pay a super high premium. So the Japanese market has been hot for decades, since the 70s or 80s. They've been collecting Americana stuff. So it's kind of a different world out there. They're buying different product, specifically true vintage and super rare items, so it doesn't affect too much. But I still don't work with them too much either. We really just focus on the top trends, stuff that we could scale the most and get the most volume of.
That makes sense. And so, how do you train your sorters? How long have they been with you, and how have they seen things change in terms of your customer needs?
Sure. I mean, we've had, a pretty high turnover over the years. The team that I have right now is amazing. It's definitely the best team we've had. They've been with us for about 3 years, but we really try to hire people that have some sort of knowledge and background in vintage. There can be a caveat with that, which a lot of these people are resellers, and then you have to
Yeah,
think about, potential theft or conflicts there. But yeah, I mean, fortunately, we haven't dealt too much with theft, just a little bit. But yeah, people typically come in and they're passionate about the stuff already, and they know their stuff. And anything else we have to educate on, we get that done pretty quickly in like a couple weeks.
Yeah. And then in terms of the customer base, has that changed at all in the last few years?
Yeah, so we started off shipping mostly overseas to Europe. I would say in 2020, about 80% of our sales were coming in from Europe, Australia, New Zealand. There were super hot markets over there. Australia and New Zealand crashed a little bit. They don't have a huge population, and we were shipping an abundance of stuff, along with a lot of other wholesalers and rag houses as well. But I saw their market crash in about 2022. The UK is still the hottest market per capita for this type of vintage fashion. But they have a lot of wholesalers over there. There's a lot of people doing what we do over there, whereas we're one of the only ones in the country in the US doing what we do. So we
Yeah.
kind of stopped in the UK as well. But fortunately, the US market has picked up dramatically since 2022, and we ship probably 90 to 95% of our audience is now in the US. So we've seen dramatic growth in the last few years in the US post COVID. And I mean, if you read the ThreadUp report, they're really good about digging into the stats. Like it's going to continue to grow rapidly.
Yeah, that's amazing from not only the cost savings for you all and just kind of improving that margin, but also the sustainability vantage point and, shipping things across the world
For
has
sure.
some
Yeah. Ideally, we
caveats.
want to we want to stick to domestic as much as we could. So it's just kind of been a waiting game since I started in 2010. Waiting for the US to catch on. We're typically behind in fashion, especially behind Europe. So I saw the light at the end of the tunnel with the UK and Europe just loving this stuff through the 2010s. And now America's catching up in the 2020s. And hopefully we surpass it, over the next 5, 10 years. Hopefully demand just continues to grow.
Talk me through the sourcing side of things for you guys. So you are mostly sourcing pre-sorted, you mentioned, from rag houses abroad. Is that correct?
Abroad and domestic. Most of them have moved abroad just because of the cost of labor. But we do have a good amount of rag houses domestic too. I'd say mostly domestic, uh, with some abroad here and there, wherever we need to fill in. It just takes so long to get it from over there, and the prices are
Yeah,
actually I find a little higher abroad because we would be competing with the UK market where they're just soaking all this stuff up. They're just buying it all up. So
right.
America is the source for all of it too. Like the UK
Yeah.
is buying American used clothing. Europe mostly just wants American used clothing. So yeah, it does make sense logistically to keep it here and just buy it directly from the source wherever possible.
Yeah, 100%. What I've seen, and this is more so on the women's side, I'm wondering if you've seen any parallels in men's secondhand, but given fast fashion's rise, there's kind of a decrease in the quality of clothes. And then obviously, once that trickles down to what you get at sorting facilities and rag houses, it can be really difficult to find those really high quality items. I'm assuming it's different for vintage and grail and men's in general. Would you say that?
I mean, it's definitely drying up over time. You see less and less of it over time. Um, but fortunately, like t-shirts, like being unisex, like there's just so much of it circulating. Like, so I don't think t-shirts and sweatshirts will be hard to find moving forward. But like the real grail stuff, like the rare t-shirts, yeah, those are drying up pretty rapidly. It's getting harder and harder to find that. And yeah, fast fashion is inundating our credential loads. So yeah, it's getting harder to find better stuff.
Yeah. Let's talk about your growth during the tariffs. Um, so in February of 2025, when the tariffs were announced, TVF saw a 41% revenue increase month over month. Tell me more about what that was like. And I know that there was some press around it. So just, yeah, I'd love to hear more about that moment.
Yeah, so when the tariff scare happened, it was around January, February of last year. Yeah, there was a lot of industries dealing with, a lot of real problems with the tariff increase, and obviously secondhand, being in the States and from the States, it wasn't subject to that. So we did get some press on a bunch of news publications, and it was pretty exciting to share that we weren't affected by tariffs, and hopefully secondhand as a whole got a boost from that, and more people were made aware of the beauty of buying secondhand, reselling secondhand. It's just great for so many reasons. Like that's a whole nother discussion of why it's so great. But yeah, no, part of that boost was because that that scare in January, like we did take a dip, but then in February, once more word got out that secondhand wasn't going to be taxed, I guess a lot of people doubled down and just started buying a lot. So yeah, we saw a pretty rapid increase after that.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And it's cool to see from kind of a removed perspective, like your customers are basically the retailers, the storefronts, virtual or brick and mortar, to the end user. So it's cool to see kind of the downstream effects and how they're sourcing and being more intentional because they were one of the only unaffected retailers from these tariffs. Um,
Yeah.
so speaking of, I would love to talk about your play in brick and mortar before we talk about what you guys are up to with Shed. So Mids Market, I had a chance to stop by. It is a 12,000 square foot retail experience that you guys definitely had a super interesting spin to the traditional thrift or even vintage store model. More emphasis on the experiential tapping into culture music of Miami, and then also the pricing. So moving away from those crazy high ticketed items that you typically see across the sales floor in vintage, and focusing on $6, $9, and $12 bins, and then some specialty racks. So tell me about how you decided on that pricing model, if that was how you started out the gate or a transition, and the unit economics behind this business versus the wholesale business.
Sure. I'll sort of run you through our retail journey, brick and mortar retail journey over. It was about a 3-year period. So me and my wife Evelyn, we had no retail background, but after wholesaling successfully for a few years, we were like, why not take a stab at it? A warehouse across the street became available, and it was just really convenient for us to fill it up and try some sort of first retail experience there. So we put out a bunch of bins and basically sold mostly by pound with some racks of premium stuff, and it was just a huge hit down here in Miami, like a really big hit. It went viral on so many occasions, celebrities coming by. It was really exciting to have such success in retail, like right out the gate with minimal knowledge, minimal setup. There's just nothing down here in Miami like that. I'm not sure how much of the audience is familiar with Miami's vintage or secondhand scene, but it's pretty much non-existent. We do have some big flea markets down here, but there's not a lot of vintage stores or anything like that. So we kind of paved the way for that starting off. I think it was 2022. We had our first like big store. And then we quickly opened up a couple more stores in malls. The first one
Oh,
was in Sawgrass Mall, which is like a big international mall. We were the first secondhand store in that mall that's been around for 30 plus years. So that was kind of cool. I
that's
used
pretty
to
cool.
go there when I was a little kid. So when we moved back to Florida to see my store, and there was pretty cool.
Yeah.
But yeah, my wife kind of managed the retail operations, and it's a whole different beast getting into retail from wholesale. There's a there's a lot of challenges that we faced opening up. We had 5 or 6 stores total, and the final one. So we tried several different brands, several different price points and ways of selling, and the final one was mids market. And our goal with mids was to focus on just good quality average secondhand trendy clothes, right? Like we weren't focused on the super premium stuff that like a lot of vintage niche boutique stores focus on, and we weren't selling just general thrift stuff, which could be just a mixed bag where you're looking for treasure. We just had a lot of what like generally people are looking for, like trendy t-shirts, sweatshirts, jackets, denim. So we filled up the whole store with that. Most of it was on racks. About half of it was in bins. We were selling by pound there too. So we just took the best of all of our experiences, tossed it into mids market. We set it up as a club. Late at night, we throw raves and stuff, bring on promoters to bring their crowds. And so that was kind of a cool experience. We were open for about a year and a half, and we just decided it was just a little too much. So we decided to go back to retail. We had three stores at the time. This was actually in January of this year, just about 6, 7 months ago. So we just decided to go straight all the way in on wholesale, but then ultimately selling online with Shed, which we could get into now.
I also did not know that whole journey of the retail store's evolution, so that's really interesting. So you have seen so many different iterations of businesses in the secondhand space. There's probably not one that you haven't touched yet. Really excited about what you're doing with Shed and how it's bringing new value to a space that has not seen the innovation it probably should have seen. So tell us about what Shed is and what's inspired that.
Awesome, yeah. So last year, dealing in retail and just I don't want to say it's a headache. It's just a lot more work than I was used to dealing in wholesale. It's more hands off. It's just buying and selling large goods. You're not dealing with the general public as much. So I just kind of saw like like do do we want to double down with retail full steam and potentially franchise a vintage thrift store, or do we want to do something online? So AI started getting big last year, as we all know. And I was like, AI is opening up a lot of possibilities. Like, how could we use it with secondhand? Started throwing around a lot of ideas, playing around with different vibe coding softwares. Really just fell in love with one of them, Lovable specifically. I use that on a daily basis. And yeah, just started going to town, getting different ideas out, different concepts, seeing how we could sort of enhance the thrift vintage experience online. And we landed on, after many different iterations, I landed on the concept of Shed, which is the ability for people to effortlessly sell their clothes with just some pictures, where Shed develops all the listings for them off of a picture, and they could drop auctions so they don't have to worry about knowing the price, researching things, understanding things. They just drop an auction, and the market has price discovery on that item. So yeah, I developed Shed for about 8 to 10 months. I was working on it in the back end, and we did a soft launch in February. And yeah, we've been rocking ever since. It's really focused on what we sell at Thrift Vintage Fashion, being the main supplier of it right now. It's mainly men's vintage and trendy branded clothing. But we have a pretty good audience on there right now. People are using it to source, which is kind of interesting. It became a way for people to handpick some of our stuff because we are putting certain items online, and then people get to handpick from there. So instead of just buying mixes from TVF, they are able to handpick and source their own curated inventory. So it's very complementary to what we're doing with TVF. But aside from just selling more of our own stuff online, we are opening it up to the public slowly, of just resellers for now being able to shed their inventory, as well as the general public, anybody who wants to sell their clothes. It's very easy to get on there. Just upload a front back tag pic, and the entire professional listing is created for you, all aspects of it, and you could just shed it online with just a couple clicks.
Amazing. We'll definitely have information on that and the rollout in the show notes. Um, so is in terms of TVF and Shed, is that within the TVF warehouse, is that kind of another sort process to determine which items should go on the Shed platform, or how does that work?
Yeah, so we really sprinkle a lot of everything. We don't really necessarily pull from our mixes. I mean, we don't add. at TVF, we never really offered premium in our mixes. Like it might slip in there here and there, but I don't necessarily buy premium. That's a totally different market. I guess we didn't distinguish that too much on the call, but like there's drag houses and other wholesale suppliers that may focus on like premium rare pieces, but to
Hmm.
me it's not super scalable. Like sure, they're like alluring to, to find something that's $100 and resell it to somebody, but to me it's just more about volume and scale and just putting clothes on people's bodies, quality secondhand clothes, giving them access to it. So that's always been my thing. That's how I buy for TVF. So while Shed does have some, cool rare pieces here and there, it's more of just the broader scope of everything we see within TVF.
Yeah. Um, Thinking about not resellers, and not sorting facilities, rag houses, but end consumers, people who are just interested in vintage or secondhand or buying at a better value, which is the primary reason Americans buy secondhand. Why would they go to a platform like Shed versus another auction-based platform like eBay?
Sure. Well, Shed offers kind of the wholesale discount to the general public. If all of our auctions start at $5 and they last 24 hours. So it's kind of cool and gamified where it's like a faster auction. It's not, 5 seconds or 30 seconds, but it is a brief period of 24 hours where only so many eyes are getting on it right now. And yeah, it does give the public access to shop it by category, by size, however they want, and get really good deals on curated secondhand and vintage fashion.
That's huge. I think what we frequently see at In the Loop is specifically for clothing auctions that are longer. They're not, there's a lot of people that kind of forget about it.
People
So
lose
that fast
interest. Yeah.
turnaround, right? Exactly. Especially for clothing, when they're just trying, they're not maybe looking for something specific that they've been like waiting on for months. It's like, hey, this is a good piece. I want it. And they should have a experience that's more akin to shopping on e-commerce generally. So I
For
love that
sure.
24 hour.
One of the biggest motivations to go with the Shed concept was the success of WhatNot and live selling. We have done a ton of experimenting on there. We were on and off, but had a lot of success on there. But the reality is, for the general public, most people don't want to sell live.
Yep.
So while WhatNot's extremely successful as being the first successful live only platform, I find there's much more possibility and potential to get people that don't want to sell live but still have a lot of stuff to sell. So that's kind of the market we're going after with Shed is like the faceless version of Whatnot.
Yeah.
Auctions, gamified, curated stuff. Anybody could sign up and sell without having to get in front of a camera and sell people.
Yeah. No, that definitely makes sense. I actually just read a post on LinkedIn and posted about it. It was basically talking about how StockX is going into the live selling space, um, following Whatnot's massive success. And something that is worth noting is just the gendered divide. Obviously, live sales with like QVC as kind of the originator is definitely a mostly female space. And Whatnot, though they've been more balanced lately, it's like around 60% female. So I think it's interesting that a predominantly male platform, StockX, is entering into the space. I just think there's some different dynamics there in terms of the kind of seller persona, and just the personality and involved with live selling. And I think the faceless approach is very smart because most people don't want to be on the other, they don't want to be on the side of the camera. That's this super
I mean,
engaging
yeah,
personality for hours.
we'll see how the dynamics play out in the US over time with live selling. I know certain public people are very bullish on it. Personally, I don't know. Like I could see, China being huge on it, but America
Right.
not totally being huge on it. That's kind of the bucket that I'm in. Like, just because it's huge in China doesn't necessarily mean Americans are going to adopt to it. Like, when you're buying on live, it does involve like staring at your phone all day, and it's very linear. It's like waiting for them to just pull up something you like and you're competing with so many people live, which is exhilarating and it's a good experience. I'm not knocking what that is, but I'm just talking about the broader market. Like, it's probably more interested in, just scrolling through a catalog of auctions and saying, I like this, let me place a bid on this, seeing 100 different items in a very short period of time, placing some bids, and then going about your day is way more productive than I think of just, sitting and live shopping all day. That's just my opinion. Other people feel differently.
Yeah, I think I'm more aligned on the sell side and the removing barriers to
Yeah.
getting on the camera, which I think what Shed can unlock is people who just don't know what to do with their stuff or want to get rid of it in 24 hours. Oftentimes, it takes longer than 24 hours to go and drop something off at a donation center. So, I think that turnaround and reducing those barriers are really, really compelling to sellers. So I'm excited to see how it grows outside of TBF, outside of pro resellers, and into everybody's hands. Um,
Thank you very much.
when can people join Shed as sellers and as buyers?
Sure. So right now you could buy on there. The entire public is invited to buy on there, and then we'll have the general public invited to sell on there. Probably by the end of August, we will be onboarding the general public.
Amazing. Well, congratulations on all that you've accomplished and all that is coming with Shed. And thank you so much for being on the podcast. Is there anything else you want to plug to the audience?
Buy secondhand, guys. It's better quality. It's rare. It's unique. Secondhand clothing is where it's at. Secondhand anything.
Preach,
It's better than new.
preach. Awesome. Thank you, Ryan.
Thank you, Zara. Take care.